Rebecca Hayes was exhausted. 12 hours on her feet at City General Hospital's pediatric ward, dealing with worried parents, sick children, and mountains of paperwork. All she wanted was to go home, take off her scrubs, and collapse on her couch with whatever leftovers she could find in her fridge. But of course the fridge was empty. It was always empty after her long shifts because she could never seem to remember to grocery shop on her days off. So here she was at Fresh Market, the big grocery store 2 blocks from her apartment, at 8:30 on a Tuesday night. The place was mostly empty except for a few other tired-looking people grabbing last-minute items. Rebecca grabbed a cart and headed toward the produce section, mentally running through what she needed. Milk, bread, something green so she could pretend she ate vegetables. Maybe some of those pre-made salads that always went bad before she ate them. She was examining avocados. Why were they always either rock hard or completely mushy, never just right? When she heard it, a small, muffled sound that her nurse instincts immediately recognized. Someone was crying, not the loud, attention-seeking kind of crying, but the quiet, trying to hold it together kind, the kind that actually worried her more. Rebecca looked around and spotted him near the frozen food section. A little boy, maybe 6 or 7 years old, sitting in a shopping cart all by himself. He was clutching a stuffed animal. Looked like a bunny, worn and faded from what was probably years of love and hugs. His face was red and tear-streaked, but he was trying so hard to be quiet about it. Her first thought was that his parent was probably just in the next aisle, but something made her pause. The way the kid was sitting there, the defeated slump of his small shoulders, the fact that he wasn't calling out for anyone, it didn't feel right. Rebecca abandoned her avocados and walked over to him. She crouched down next to the cart, making herself less intimidating. Years of working with kids had taught her that adults looming over them never helped. "Hey there," she said softly. "Are you okay?" The boy looked at her with these huge brown eyes, still trying to blink back tears. He shook his head. "I can't find my dad," he whispered, his voice cracking. "I've been waiting and waiting, but he's not here." Rebecca's heart squeezed. "Okay, sweetheart. That's scary, I know, but we're going to figure this out. How long have you been waiting?" The boy shrugged, which meant he didn't really know. Kids his age weren't great with time. 5 minutes could feel like an hour to them. "What's your name?" "Oliver. Oliver, that's a great name." "I'm Rebecca. I'm a nurse, which means I help people, and I'm going to help you find your dad, okay?" Oliver nodded, hugging his bunny tighter. "Can you tell me what happened? Where did you last see your dad?" "We were shopping together," Oliver said, his words coming out faster now. "And then he said he needed to get something from the car. He told me to wait right here and he'd be right back." "But that was—" He trailed off, looking around nervously. That was a really long time ago. Rebecca felt alarm bells going off in her head. What kind of parent left a 7-year-old alone in a shopping cart and then disappeared? She tried to push down her immediate judgment. There could be a reasonable explanation. Maybe, she hoped. "Okay, Oliver, let's start by letting the store know you're looking for your dad. They can make an announcement." "Does that sound good?" Oliver nodded again and Rebecca stood up, keeping one hand on the cart. She wasn't about to let this kid out of her sight until they figured out what was going on. She flagged down a store employee, a teenager who looked barely old enough to work, and explained the situation. "Oh man," the kid said, eyes widening. "Yeah, I'll get the manager." The manager, a middle-aged woman named Patricia according to her name tag, arrived quickly. She had that efficient, seen-everything look that managers in retail develop over years of dealing with chaos. "How long has he been alone?" Patricia asked Rebecca quietly. "He's not sure. Could be 20 minutes, could be longer." Patricia frowned. "We'll make an announcement. If the father doesn't show up in the next few minutes, we might need to call the authorities. We have protocols for this." Rebecca understood the protocols, but something about the way Oliver tensed up at those words made her hesitate. "Let's try the announcement first." Patricia nodded and headed to customer service. A moment later, her voice came over the store's speaker system, professional but urgent, asking for the parent of a child named Oliver to come to the front of the store immediately. They waited. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Oliver's anxiety was visibly increasing, and Rebecca could see him starting to shake a little. The store's air conditioning was pretty aggressive, and the kid was wearing just a t-shirt and shorts. "Oliver, are you cold?" Rebecca asked. He nodded, and she immediately shrugged off her cardigan and draped it around his shoulders. It was way too big for him, but he pulled it tight around himself gratefully. Are you hungry? When did you eat last? Lunch, Oliver said quietly. At school. School lunch would have been around noon. It was now almost 9 at night. Rebecca made a decision. Come on, she said, gently helping Oliver out of the cart. We're going to get you something to eat while we wait for your dad. She led him to the deli section and let him pick out a sandwich and a bottle of water. She added a bag of chips because what 7-year-old didn't like chips? At the register, the cashier looked at them with understanding. Clearly, the announcement had spread through the store staff. No charge, the cashier said quietly. But Rebecca shook her head and paid anyway. This wasn't about the money. They sat on a bench near the customer service desk. Oliver ate slowly like he was trying to make it last, or maybe like his stomach was too tight with worry to really enjoy it. Rebecca sat next to him, keeping up a gentle stream of conversation about nothing important, school, his favorite subjects, whether he liked his teacher. Anything to keep his mind off the situation. My mom used to say I worry too much, Oliver said suddenly, staring at his half-eaten sandwich. She used to tell me everything would be okay. Used to. Past tense. Rebecca caught it immediately. Your mom sounds like she was pretty smart, Rebecca said carefully. She was. She died last year. Oliver said it so matter-of-factly, the way kids sometimes did with devastating information. She got really sick and the doctors couldn't make her better. Now it's just me and Dad. Rebecca felt like someone had reached into her chest and squeezed. This poor kid. He'd already lost his mother, and now his father had left him alone in a grocery store for God knows what reason. I'm so sorry about your mom, Oliver. That must be really hard. Oliver nodded, blinking rapidly. Dad's really sad all the time now. And tired. He works a lot. Sometimes he forgets things. He looked up at Rebecca with those huge, scared eyes. I don't want him to get in trouble. He's trying really hard. Please don't let them take me away from him. And there it was. The real fear. Not just that his dad was missing, but that whatever was happening would result in Oliver being separated from the only parent he had left. Oliver, I promise you we're just trying to make sure you're safe and find your dad. That's all. Another announcement went out over the speakers. Still nothing. Patricia appeared again, this time with a more serious expression. It's been almost 30 minutes, she said to Rebecca. I think we need to call. Just give it a little longer, Rebecca interrupted, surprising herself. She had no reason to defend this absent father, but something about Oliver's desperation was getting to her. Please. Patricia looked like she wanted to argue, but finally nodded. 10 more minutes. Then I have to follow protocol. Rebecca checked her watch. 8:55. She'd been here almost half an hour herself, and she didn't even know these people. She should probably just go home. Let the professionals handle it. But when she looked at Oliver, still wrapped in her cardigan, still holding his worn bunny, trying so hard to be brave, she couldn't make herself leave. Tell me about your bunny, Rebecca said. Does he have a name? Mr. Hops, Oliver said, managing a small smile. My mom made him for me when I was 3. She was really good at sewing. Dad tried to fix him once when his ear came off, but he showed her the slightly crooked ear. Dad's not so good at sewing. Rebecca laughed softly. Well, Mr. Hops has character now. That makes him special. They sat in companionable silence for a moment. Rebecca was running through scenarios in her head, none of them good. Medical emergency, accident, abandonment, though that seemed unlikely given what Oliver had said about his dad. Or maybe, and this was the thought she kept coming back to, maybe the father was struggling. Maybe he was overwhelmed. Maybe losing his wife had broken something in him and he was barely holding it together. Maybe he'd stepped out to the parking lot and had some kind of breakdown. It happened. More often than people wanted to admit. He'll come, Oliver said suddenly, like he was trying to convince himself. My dad always comes. He promised me after Mom died that he wouldn't leave me. He promised. Rebecca put her hand on Oliver's small shoulder. Then I bet he'll be here. But inside she was preparing for the very real possibility that Child Protective Services would be getting called in the next few minutes. And this scared little boy who'd already lost so much would lose even more. She checked her watch again. 9:03. 7 minutes until Patricia's deadline. Rebecca found herself hoping, praying even though she wasn't particularly religious, that Oliver's father would come through that door. That there would be a reasonable explanation. That this kid wouldn't have to face another loss today. 6 minutes. Oliver leaned against her slightly, exhausted from fear and emotion. Rebecca wrapped an arm around him, feeling the weight of his small body against her side. 5 minutes. Where was this kid's father? What kind of situation were they really dealing with here? And then, just as Patricia was walking back toward them with a phone in her hand and an apologetic expression on her face, the automatic doors at the front of the store burst open. A man rushed in, disheveled and wild-eyed, calling out a name that made Oliver's head snap up. Dad! The man who came through those doors looked like he'd been through a war. His hair stuck up in different directions, his shirt was untucked and wrinkled, and he had a wild, panicked expression that immediately softened when he spotted Oliver. The relief on his face was so intense it was almost painful to watch. Oliver, he shouted again, rushing toward them. Oliver jumped up from the bench and Rebecca had to catch her cardigan before it fell to the floor. The boy ran to his father and they collided in a hug that was fierce and desperate. The man dropped to his knees, clutching his son like he'd thought he might never see him again, his hands shaking as they pressed against Oliver's back. I'm so sorry, he was saying, over and over. I'm so sorry, buddy. I'm here now. I'm here. Rebecca stood back, giving them space, but she was watching the father carefully with her trained medical eye. Something wasn't right. The man was pale. Not just regular pale, but the kind of pale that suggested something was seriously wrong. He had dark circles under his eyes like he hadn't slept in days, and even from a few feet away, Rebecca could see a slight tremor in his hands. Patricia appeared beside Rebecca, arms crossed, her expression stern. Sir, do you know how long your child has been waiting alone? The man looked up, and that's when Rebecca got her first clear look at his face. There was something familiar about him, something that tugged at her memory, but she couldn't quite place it. Maybe he just had one of those faces, or maybe she was so tired from her shift that everyone was starting to look familiar. I know, he said, his voice rough. I know, and I can't apologize enough. I went out to the car to get my wallet. I realized I'd left it there, and I don't know exactly what happened. I felt dizzy, really dizzy, and the next thing I knew I was sitting in my car and I'd lost track of time. I came back as fast as I could. You lost consciousness? Rebecca heard herself asking, her nurse instincts overriding everything else. The man looked at her for the first time, and there it was again, that strange flash of recognition that she couldn't quite identify. His eyes widened slightly, but then he focused back on answering her question. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Everything just went fuzzy for a while. Rebecca exchanged a look with Patricia. This was serious. People didn't just randomly lose consciousness in parking lots for no reason. Sir, I'm a nurse, Rebecca said, stepping closer. You need to be seen by a doctor. Tonight. What you're describing could be a number of things, but none of them are good to ignore. The man stood up slowly, keeping one hand on Oliver's shoulder like he needed the contact to stay grounded. I'm fine. I just need to get my son home and... He swayed slightly and Rebecca reached out to steady him on instinct. You're not fine, she said firmly. And I'm guessing this isn't the first time something like this has happened, is it? The man looked away, which was answer enough. Oliver was staring up at his father with worry that no 7-year-old should have to carry. Dad's been really tired lately, Oliver said quietly. He says it's just from working a lot. Working how much? Rebecca asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. The man, Rebecca realized she didn't even know his name yet, sighed heavily. I work 2 jobs. Day shift at a warehouse, night shift doing security at an office building. I'm a single parent. I do what I have to do. And you're running yourself into the ground, Rebecca said. It wasn't a question. Patricia had been watching this exchange with a softer expression now. Sir, what's your name? Nathan. Nathan Brooks. Rebecca tested the name in her mind, trying to figure out why everything about this man seemed familiar. Maybe she'd treated Oliver at some point, but no, she would have remembered that. Kids with worn stuffed bunnies named Mr. Hops weren't easy to forget. Mr. Brooks, Patricia said, I understand your situation is difficult, but leaving a child unattended for that long is serious. If this nurse hadn't stayed with your son, I know, Nathan interrupted, his voice breaking. I know, and I'm grateful to her. I don't know how to thank you, he said, turning to Rebecca. You didn't have to stay with him. Yes, I did, Rebecca said simply. He needed someone. They stood there in awkward silence for a moment. Patricia finally cleared her throat. I'm going to need to file a report about this incident. It's policy. But given the circumstances and the fact that your son is clearly safe and you've returned, I don't think we need to involve anyone else tonight. The relief on Nathan's face was palpable. Thank you. Thank you so much. But, Patricia continued, looking at Rebecca, I think this nurse is right. You need medical attention. If you passed out once, it could happen again. What if you'd been driving with Oliver in the car? Nathan's face went even paler at that thought. Oliver pressed closer to his father, clearly scared by the conversation. Rebecca made a decision. Mr. Brooks, Nathan, I'm going to check your vitals. Right here, right now. And then we're going to decide together what needs to happen next. Is that okay? Nathan looked like he wanted to refuse, but he finally nodded. Okay. I have a kid in my car, Rebecca said. It's just outside. I'll be right back. She hurried out to her car, which was parked just 3 spaces from the entrance, and grabbed her bag. She always kept basic supplies with her. A blood pressure cuff, a thermometer, a stethoscope. You never knew when you might need them, and times like this proved why. When she got back, Nathan and Oliver were sitting on the bench where she and Oliver had been earlier. Oliver was still pressed against his father's side, and Nathan had his arm around his son, holding him close. The image was sweet but also heartbreaking. These two had clearly been through so much together. Rebecca knelt down in front of Nathan. Okay, let me check your blood pressure first. This might feel a little tight, but it won't hurt. She wrapped the cuff around his arm and pumped it up, watching the gauge carefully. When she got the reading, she had to hide her concern. His blood pressure was low, too low. Combined with the dizziness and loss of consciousness, it painted a worrying picture. When was the last time you ate? She asked. Nathan thought about it. Breakfast, I think. Maybe 7 this morning? Rebecca checked her watch. It was after 9 at night. That's 14 hours, Nathan. And when was the last time you slept? Really slept? I don't know. A few days ago? I catch naps between shifts when I can. A few days, Rebecca repeated, trying to keep the judgment out of her voice. Nathan, you can't run on empty like this. Your body is shutting down. That's what happened in the parking lot. Your blood pressure dropped because you're exhausted, malnourished, and stressed beyond what anyone should have to handle. I don't have a choice, Nathan said, and there was something desperate in his voice. I have bills, medical bills from when my wife was sick, rent, food, Oliver's school supplies. I can't afford to miss work, and I definitely can't afford a hospital visit. You can't afford to pass out while driving with your son either, Rebecca said gently but firmly. Nathan, I get it. I see families in your situation every day at the hospital. But you have to take care of yourself so you can take care of Oliver. If something happens to you, what happens to him? Oliver's eyes filled with tears at that, and Nathan pulled his son closer, pressing a kiss to the top of his head. I know, Nathan whispered. I know you're right. Come on, Rebecca said, standing up and offering him her hand. I'm going to follow you home. Make sure you get there safely, and I'm going to give you some information about resources that might help. You don't have to do that, Nathan protested, but Rebecca shook her head. Yes, I do. Look, I don't know you and you don't know me, but your son spent the last 40 minutes scared and alone. And the only reason he held it together was because he was worried about you getting in trouble. That tells me everything I need to know about what kind of father you are. You're trying. You're just trying too hard all by yourself. So let someone help. Nathan looked at her for a long moment, and Rebecca could see him wrestling with pride and desperation. Finally, he nodded. Okay, thank you. They walked out to the parking lot together, Oliver holding both his father's hand and Mr. Hop's. Rebecca pointed to her car, and Nathan pointed to his, an old sedan that had definitely seen better days. She followed them through the quiet streets, watching Nathan's driving carefully for any signs of instability. But he seemed okay, driving slowly and carefully, probably hyper-aware that someone was watching. The apartment complex they pulled into was modest but well-maintained. Not the worst Rebecca had seen, but clearly not where someone would choose to live if they had better options. She parked and got out, following Nathan and Oliver up an external staircase to the second floor. Nathan unlocked apartment 2B and flipped on the lights. The apartment was small, probably just 2 bedrooms, but it was clean and organized. There were toys in a basket by the couch, neatly arranged, dishes drying in a rack by the sink, photos on the walls and shelves, I'm going to get you some water, Rebecca said, heading for the kitchen before Nathan could protest. She filled a glass and brought it to him, along with the banana she'd spotted in a fruit bowl. Eat this. Drink that. When was your last shift? I'm supposed to go in at 11 tonight, Nathan said quietly. Call in sick. You can't work like this. If I call in sick, I lose pay. I can't, Nathan. Rebecca cut him off, her voice gentle but firm. If you go to work like this, you might pass out again or worse. One night off won't destroy you, but pushing yourself might. She could see him calculating in his head, weighing options that all seemed impossible. Oliver had gone to a bedroom, his presumably, and Rebecca could hear him moving around quietly. How long has it been like this? Rebecca asked. Since your wife died? About 1.5 years, Nathan said, peeling the banana slowly. Victoria had lupus. It progressed really fast. By the end, the medical bills were... He shook his head. I'm still paying them off. Insurance covered some, but not nearly enough. And I had to take time off work when she was really sick, which meant falling behind on everything else. I'm sorry, Rebecca said. And she meant it. I can't imagine how hard that must have been. How hard it still is. Oliver's been amazing through all of it, Nathan said, looking toward the bedroom door. He's so strong. Stronger than I am sometimes. I just want to give him a good life, you know? I want him to be okay despite everything. He will be, Rebecca assured him, but he needs you alive and healthy to get there. Nathan nodded, finishing the banana and drinking the water. Already, Rebecca could see a bit more color in his face. Low blood sugar and dehydration had probably been major factors in his collapse. She stood up and grabbed a notepad from her bag. I'm going to write down some resources for you. There are programs that can help with medical bills, food assistance, even counseling if you need it. There's no shame in asking for help, Nathan. As she wrote, Rebecca found herself looking at the photos on the shelves more carefully. Nathan, younger and happier, with his arm around a beautiful woman. Victoria, obviously. Nathan and Oliver at what looked like a park, both of them laughing. And then one photo that made Rebecca freeze. It was a college graduation photo. Nathan in his cap and gown, surrounded by friends. And something about it, something about the people in the background, made Rebecca's stomach drop. She picked up the frame, her hand suddenly shaking. No, it couldn't be. But as she looked closer, recognition slammed into her like a physical force. Nathan Brooks. She knew exactly who he was, and suddenly, helping this stranger didn't feel simple anymore. Rebecca's hands trembled as she held the graduation photo. She knew that face. Not just from tonight, not just from these last couple of hours. She knew it from 15 years ago, when it had been the face she'd woken up to every morning, the face she'd imagined growing old with, the face that had smiled at her while promising forever, right before shattering her entire world. Nathan Brooks. Her Nathan, her ex-fiancé. She must have made some kind of sound because Nathan looked up from where he'd been sitting on the couch, exhaustion written in every line of his body. Are you okay? He asked, which was almost funny considering his situation. Rebecca set the photo down carefully, afraid she might drop it. Her mind was racing, trying to piece together a timeline that made sense. 15 years ago, she'd been 23, fresh out of nursing school planning a wedding. Nathan had been 25, working at his first real job after college. They'd been so young, so naive, so sure they'd figured out life. And then she'd found out about Victoria, about the affair, about the lies. The woman in these photos, the woman whose death had left Nathan and Oliver struggling, was the same woman Nathan had cheated with. The same woman who'd been the reason Rebecca had packed her bags, returned her engagement ring, and moved to a different city to start over. I need to use your bathroom, Rebecca managed to say, her voice sounding strange even to her own ears. Oh, sure. Down the hall. First door on the right. Rebecca walked to the bathroom on shaky legs and closed the door behind her, leaning against it and trying to breathe. Her reflection in the mirror showed someone who looked as shell-shocked as she felt. She'd changed a lot in 15 years. Her hair was different, shorter now. She'd lost weight, gained it back, lost it again. She wore glasses now instead of contacts. She was 38, not 23. No wonder Nathan hadn't recognized her immediately in the store. She barely recognized herself from that time. But how had she not recognized him? Even tired and worn down, even 15 years older, She'd looked at his face for hours tonight and felt only that nagging sense of familiarity. Maybe because she'd spent so many years actively trying to forget him, trying to bury those memories so deep they couldn't hurt anymore. Rebecca splashed cold water on her face and tried to think rationally. This was impossible. What were the odds? In a city of hundreds of thousands of people, she'd randomly helped the child of her ex-fiancé. The universe had to be playing some kind of sick joke. She thought about Oliver, sweet Oliver with his worn bunny and his fear of losing his father. Oliver, who would have been born about 8 or 9 years after Rebecca and Nathan broke up. Which meant Nathan and Victoria had built a life together, had gotten married, had created this child who was currently in his bedroom, probably getting ready for bed, completely unaware that the nice lady who'd helped him in the store was connected to his parents' past. Rebecca wanted to leave. Everything in her screamed to walk out of this bathroom, out of this apartment, out of this entire situation and never look back. She didn't owe Nathan anything. In fact, after what he'd done to her, she probably owed him even less than nothing. But there was Oliver, an innocent child who'd already lost his mother and was terrified of losing his father. A child who'd done absolutely nothing wrong but had the misfortune of being born into complicated circumstances. Rebecca took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and opened the bathroom door. She could do this. She was a professional. She'd faced much harder situations in her career. She just needed to give Nathan the resource information and leave. That was it. But when she walked back into the living room, Nathan was standing looking at a photo on the opposite wall, and she could tell by the rigid set of his shoulders that he'd figured it out. "Becca," he said quietly, using the old nickname that nobody had called her in 15 years. "It's you, isn't it?" Rebecca's first instinct was to deny it, to pretend she had no idea what he was talking about. But that seemed pointless now. "It's Rebecca now." "I don't go by Becca anymore." Nathan turned around slowly, and the expression on his face was complicated. Shock, guilt, shame, and something else she couldn't quite identify. "I didn't recognize you. Not until just now when I really thought about it. Your hair, your glasses, but your voice. I should have known your voice." "It's been 15 years, Rebecca said, trying to keep her voice neutral. "People change. Not that much. I'm an idiot. I should have." He ran a hand through his hair, looking utterly lost. "Of all the people, of all the grocery stores, what are the odds?" "Apparently pretty good, considering here we are." They stood there in awkward silence, the weight of their shared history filling the small apartment like smoke. Rebecca could remember everything now, the exact shade of blue in his eyes that had made her fall in love with him. The way his hair stuck up in the morning, the sound of his laugh, and she could remember the other things too. The lies, the betrayal, the way her entire future had crumbled in a single afternoon when she'd found text messages on his phone that made everything brutally clear. "Rebecca," Nathan started, but she held up her hand. "Don't. Whatever you're about to say, just don't. I need to apologize. I've needed to apologize for 15 years. "You don't get to do that," Rebecca said, surprised by the anger in her own voice. "You don't get to apologize to make yourself feel better. Not after all this time. I'm not trying to make myself feel better. I'm trying to—" "What?" "Explain, make excuses. Tell me how it wasn't that bad. Or how I didn't understand, or how you and Victoria were just so in love you couldn't help yourselves." Nathan flinched at the mention of Victoria's name. No excuses. What I did was wrong. I was young and stupid and scared, and I handled everything in the worst possible way. I destroyed what we had, and I destroyed you in the process. I know that. I've known it for 15 years. "And yet you married her," Rebecca said, hating how bitter she sounded. "You married the woman you cheated on me with. So clearly it worked out great for you." "It wasn't like that," Nathan said quietly. "Victoria and we tried to build something real. We really did. But it was always shadowed by the guilt of how it started. She knew what we'd done to you. It ate at her. And it ate at me." "Good," Rebecca said, and then immediately felt terrible for saying it. Because Victoria was dead, and no matter what had happened 15 years ago, nobody deserved to die young and leave behind a child. Nathan's eyes were shining with unshed tears. "I loved her. I won't pretend I didn't. But I also know that what we built was on a foundation of lies and betrayal. And maybe that's why everything fell apart so completely when she got sick. Maybe we were paying for what we did to you. Life doesn't work like that, Rebecca said, but her voice was softer now. People don't get sick as punishment for their past mistakes. That's not how the universe operates. Then why does it feel like it? They stood in silence again. From Oliver's room, Rebecca could hear the soft sounds of the boy moving around, getting ready for bed, blissfully unaware of the tension in the living room. How long were you married? Rebecca asked, not sure why she wanted to know but unable to stop herself. 10 years. We got married about 3 years after you and I ended. Oliver was born 2 years after that. And Victoria got diagnosed with lupus when he was 4. It progressed really fast. By the time Oliver was 6, she was gone. Rebecca did the math in her head, which meant Nathan had been 28 when he married Victoria. And Victoria had been sick for most of Oliver's childhood. This child had never really known a time when his mother wasn't fighting an illness. That must have been so hard, Rebecca heard herself saying. For all of you. It was the hardest thing I've ever been through, Nathan admitted, watching her fade away while trying to keep Oliver's world as normal as possible. And then after, trying to figure out how to be both parents at once, trying to make enough money to pay off the medical debt and still be present for Oliver. I'm failing at all of it. You're not failing, Rebecca said automatically and then stopped herself. Why was she comforting him? She should be furious. She should be listing all the ways he'd ruined her life, all the trust issues she'd developed, all the failed relationships that came after because she couldn't let anyone close enough to hurt her again. But looking at him now, exhausted, grieving, struggling, she couldn't summon that anger. Or rather, the anger was still there, but it was mixed with something more complicated. Pity, maybe, or empathy, or just the basic human recognition of someone who was suffering. I am failing, Nathan insisted. I passed out in a parking lot and left my son alone for 40 minutes. What kind of father does that? The kind who's working himself to death trying to provide for his child, Rebecca said. The kind who's doing the best he can with impossible circumstances. Nathan, you're not a bad father. You're an overwhelmed father. There's a difference. Nathan looked at her with such raw gratitude that Rebecca had to look away. This was too much, too complicated. She needed to leave. I should go, she said, picking up her bag. I've left you the resource information. Please use it. And please, for Oliver's sake, take care of yourself. Rebecca, wait. Nathan took a step toward her, then seemed to think better of it and stopped. I know I have no right to ask you for anything. And I know that helping us tonight was just a coincidence, just you being a good person who saw a kid in trouble, but what? Can I at least say thank you? Really say it? You stayed with Oliver when you could have just walked away. You made sure he was safe and fed and not alone. You drove us home and checked my vitals and gave me information that might actually help us. You did all of that before you even knew who I was. That's more than I deserve. Rebecca felt tears prickling at her own eyes now. I did it for Oliver. Not for you, I know. And that makes it even more meaningful. Because Oliver deserves all the kindness the world has to offer. And I'm grateful he found it in you. They stood there. Two people who'd once promised each other forever, now strangers bound only by a chance encounter and a shared painful history. Rebecca wanted to say something profound, something that would make sense of all of this. But she had nothing. I really do need to go, she said finally. Nathan nodded, and Rebecca headed for the door. Her hand was on the knob when Oliver's voice called out from his bedroom. Ms. Rebecca, are you leaving? She turned to see the boy standing in his doorway, wearing superhero pajamas, still clutching Mr. Hops. He looked so small and vulnerable that Rebecca's heart squeezed. Yeah, sweetheart, I need to get home. Oliver walked over to her and, without warning, wrapped his arms around her waist in a tight hug. Thank you for staying with me. And for helping my dad. You're really nice. Rebecca hugged him back, closing her eyes against the tears that threatened to fall. You're welcome, Oliver. You're a really brave kid, you know that? Will you come back? Oliver asked, looking up at her with those huge brown eyes. To visit, maybe? Rebecca looked at Nathan, who quickly shook his head. Oliver, Ms. Rebecca has her own life. She was just being kind tonight. We can't expect her to. I'll think about it, Rebecca heard herself saying, and then immediately wanted to take it back. What was she doing? Why was she leaving the door open to this mess? But Oliver's face lit up with such genuine happiness that Rebecca couldn't regret it. Not completely, anyway. She left the apartment in a daze, drove home on autopilot, and collapsed on her couch, still in her scrubs. Her untouched groceries were still in her car. She'd have to go get them before they spoiled, but right now she couldn't make herself move. She'd gone to the grocery store looking for avocados and ended up face to face with her past. With the man who'd broken her heart. With his son who needed help. With a situation so impossibly complicated she had no idea how to process it. Rebecca grabbed her phone and texted her best friend Linda. "You won't believe what just happened to me. Call me when you can." Then she lay there on her couch, staring at her ceiling, and wondered what on earth she was supposed to do now. Because the simple act of helping a stranger's child had just become the most complicated thing in her life. And she had a terrible feeling it was only going to get more complicated from here. Rebecca barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Oliver's face, that mixture of fear and hope. And every time she started to drift off, she'd jolt awake with Nathan's voice in her head, saying her old nickname, Becca. Nobody had called her that in 15 years because she'd specifically asked everyone not to. That name belonged to a different person, a younger person who hadn't learned yet that the people you love most can hurt you deepest. By morning, she'd made a decision. She was going to forget the whole thing happened. She'd done her good deed, helped a child in need, and that was the end of it. Nathan had her resource list. They'd be fine. She could go back to her normal life and pretend she'd never run into her ex-fiancé and his struggling family. That decision lasted exactly 3 days. On Thursday evening, Rebecca was having dinner with Linda at their favorite Thai restaurant when her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Hi, Ms. Rebecca. This is Nathan. I got your number from the store manager. I hope that's okay. I wanted to let you know I went to urgent care like you suggested. They diagnosed me with stress-induced hypertension and severe exhaustion. Doctor said I'm lucky I didn't have something worse happen. Thank you for pushing me to get checked out. And thank you again for everything you did for Oliver. We won't bother you again, but I wanted you to know your help made a real difference." Rebecca stared at the message for a long time. Linda, who'd heard the whole story the night it happened, leaned over to read it. "Well, at least he took your medical advice," Linda said, spearing a piece of spring roll. "Yeah," Rebecca said numbly. "So that's it then? Closure? Everyone moves on? That's the plan." Linda gave her a look. "And how's that working out for you?" "I don't know what you want me to say, Lynn. What am I supposed to do? Become their friend? Pretend the past didn't happen? He cheated on me. He destroyed what we had. The fact that his life is hard now doesn't change that. I'm not saying it does. I'm just saying you look miserable, which means you're not actually okay with walking away. I'm fine. You're not fine. You've been obsessing about this for 3 days. You've barely eaten. You're not sleeping. This is not fine." Rebecca put down her fork. "Okay, fine. I'm not fine. But what's the alternative? Get involved with Nathan's life again? That's insane." "I'm not suggesting you get back together with the guy," Linda said carefully. "I'm suggesting that maybe there's something unfinished here. Some closure you never got. And maybe helping his kid isn't about him at all. Maybe it's about you. How is helping Oliver about me? Because you've spent 15 years being angry and hurt and closed off. I love you, Becca. Sorry, Rebecca, but you don't let people in. You date, but you never commit. You have work friends, but you keep everyone at arm's length. Everyone except me. And that's only because I'm too stubborn to let you push me away." Rebecca wanted to argue, but Linda wasn't wrong. After Nathan, she'd built walls so high and so thick that nobody could get close enough to hurt her again. It felt safe. Lonely, but safe. So what are you saying? I'm saying maybe this situation, as weird and complicated as it is, might actually be an opportunity. To face the past. To work through some stuff. To remember what it feels like to care about people even when it's messy. That's very therapeutic of you. "I've been watching a lot of self-help videos," Linda admitted with a grin. "But seriously, think about it. What's the worst that could happen?" Rebecca could think of about 100 worst-case scenarios, but she didn't share them. Instead, she picked up her phone and typed a response to Nathan. "I'm glad you got checked out. Make sure you follow the doctor's orders. Take care of yourself and Oliver." She hit send before she could overthink it. Safe, friendly, but distant. No promises, no commitments. Nathan responded almost immediately. "I will, thank you." And that should have been the end of it. Really, it should have been. But 2 weeks later, Rebecca's phone rang while she was at work. An unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Hello? Ms. Rebecca? It was a child's voice, small and scared. Oliver. Rebecca's nurse instincts kicked into high gear immediately. Oliver, what's wrong? It's my dad. He's really sick. He's throwing up and he can't stop shaking and he won't go to the hospital because he says we can't afford it. I'm really scared. Rebecca was already grabbing her bag and heading for the door, signaling to her supervisor that she had an emergency. Oliver, I need you to stay calm, okay? Tell me exactly what's happening. As she ran to her car, Oliver explained in a shaky voice that Nathan had come home from work that morning feeling terrible. He'd been throwing up for hours. He had a fever. He kept saying he just needed to sleep it off, but Oliver knew something was really wrong. What's your address again? Rebecca asked, even though she'd memorized it from her GPS that first night. Oliver gave it to her, and Rebecca promised she'd be there in 15 minutes. She broke probably half a dozen traffic laws getting there, her mind racing through possible diagnoses: flu, food poisoning, or something worse given Nathan's already compromised health. She took the stairs 2 at a time and knocked on the apartment door. Oliver opened it immediately, his face streaked with tears. He's in his room, Oliver said, grabbing her hand and pulling her down the hall. Nathan was in bed, looking absolutely terrible. He was pale and sweating, and Rebecca could see him shaking even from the doorway. When he saw her, he tried to sit up. Rebecca, you didn't have to. Oliver shouldn't have called you. Be quiet, Rebecca said, already pulling out her thermometer. Oliver was absolutely right to call me. You're burning up. She checked his temperature, 103.2, way too high. She checked his pulse, rapid and weak. This wasn't just the flu or exhaustion. This was serious. When did this start? She asked. Last night. I thought I could work through it, but... You went to work like this? Nathan didn't answer, which was answer enough. Okay, we're going to the ER right now. Rebecca, I can't afford... I don't care, she said firmly. You can figure out the bills later. Right now you need medical attention. Oliver, can you pack a bag for your dad? Just basics, his phone charger, maybe a change of clothes. Oliver nodded and ran off, clearly relieved that an adult was taking charge. Rebecca helped Nathan sit up and get his shoes on. He was so weak he could barely stand, and she had to support most of his weight as they made their way to her car. The ER at City General was busy, but Rebecca knew the staff, and one mention of his symptoms got Nathan triaged quickly. They took him back for examination while Rebecca sat with Oliver in the waiting room. Is he going to be okay? Oliver asked, curled up in the plastic chair with Mr. Hops clutched to his chest. The doctors here are really good, Rebecca said. They're going to figure out what's wrong and fix it. What if he... Oliver couldn't finish the sentence, but Rebecca knew what he was asking. Oliver, look at me. She waited until he met her eyes. Your dad is going to be okay. He's sick and he should have come to the hospital sooner, but he's here now and they're taking care of him, okay? Oliver nodded, but tears were streaming down his face. I already lost my mom. I can't lose my dad, too. I can't. Rebecca pulled him into a hug, this child who'd been through so much and was trying so hard to be brave. You're not going to lose him. I promise. It was a promise she had no business making, but she made it anyway. Because sometimes kids needed to hear it, true or not. They sat in the waiting room for 2 hours. Rebecca bought Oliver dinner from the cafeteria. He barely touched it. She let him play games on her phone. She told him stories about funny things that had happened at the hospital. Anything to distract him from his fear. Finally, a doctor came out. Dr. Chen, someone Rebecca had worked with many times. Rebecca, you're with Mr. Brooks? Yes, what's going on? Dr. Chen glanced at Oliver, and Rebecca understood immediately. She asked Oliver to stay in the waiting room and followed Dr. Chen a short distance away. He has a severe kidney infection, Dr. Chen explained. Probably been developing for a while, but his stress and exhaustion made it worse. We're admitting him for IV antibiotics. He'll need to stay for at least 2, maybe 3 days. But he'll be okay? He should be, yes. But Rebecca, this man is running himself into the ground. His blood work shows chronic stress, malnutrition, and his kidneys are not in great shape. If he keeps going like this, we're going to be having a very different conversation next time. Rebecca nodded, her mind already racing. Nathan couldn't work for the next few days, which meant no income. And someone needed to take care of Oliver. Can I see him? She asked. Dr. Chen nodded and led her back to Nathan's bay. He was hooked up to an IV, already looking a bit better with fluids going into him. His eyes met Rebecca's, and she saw shame and gratitude mixed together. "I'm sorry," he said immediately. "Oliver shouldn't have—" "Stop apologizing," Rebecca interrupted. "Oliver did exactly the right thing. You should have come in yesterday. I know. I can't afford to miss work, and I definitely can't afford a hospital stay. We'll figure it out," Rebecca heard herself saying. "Right now you need to focus on getting better." "What about Oliver?" "He can't stay alone, and I don't have anyone else to—" "He'll stay with me," Rebecca said, the words coming out before she'd fully thought them through. Nathan's eyes widened. "Rebecca, I can't ask you to do that." "You're not asking. I'm offering. It's just for a few days until you're out of here and recovered enough to take care of him. After everything I did to you, why would you—" "This isn't about you," Rebecca said firmly. "This is about Oliver. He's a good kid who's already been through too much. I'm not going to let him end up in foster care or with some emergency placement because his father is too proud to accept help." Nathan looked like he might cry. "Thank you. I don't know how to just get better. That's all the thanks I need." Rebecca went back to the waiting room and knelt down in front of Oliver. "Good news. Your dad is going to be okay. He has an infection, and the doctors are giving him medicine to fight it. But he needs to stay in the hospital for a few days. Can I see him?" "In a little bit. But Oliver, we need to figure out where you're going to stay while your dad is here. Do you have any family nearby? Aunts, uncles, grandparents?" Oliver shook his head. "My mom's parents died before I was born. And my dad's parents. They didn't like that he married my mom. They don't talk to us. That explains so much. Nathan was completely alone in this, no support system at all." "Okay, then here's what we're going to do. You're going to stay with me for the next few days. I have a spare bedroom, and it'll be an adventure. We can visit your dad in the hospital, and when he's better, you'll go home. Sound okay?" Oliver looked uncertain. "I don't want to be a bother." "You won't be. I promise, and honestly, I could use the company. My apartment gets pretty lonely." That seemed to decide it for Oliver. He nodded, and Rebecca felt the weight of what she'd just committed to settling on her shoulders. She was taking in the child of her ex-fiancé, the man who'd cheated on her and broken her heart. She was willingly inserting herself deeper into their lives when she'd been trying to walk away. Linda was going to have a field day with this. But as they visited Nathan's room and Oliver's, face lit up seeing his father was truly okay, Rebecca knew she'd made the right choice. Not the easy choice, not the safe choice, but the right one. Over the next 3 days, Rebecca's life transformed. She had Oliver stay with her, sleeping in her spare room, going to school, doing homework at her kitchen table. She cooked meals for 2 instead of 1. She helped with math homework. She listened to stories about school and friends. She read bedtime stories, though Oliver insisted he was too old for them while simultaneously asking for just one more chapter. And every evening, they visited Nathan in the hospital. Rebecca watched Oliver and Nathan together. The easy affection, the inside jokes, the way Nathan's face lit up whenever his son entered the room. She saw how hard Nathan was trying to be both parents at once, how much he loved his son, how terrified he was of failing him. On the 3rd night, after Oliver had fallen asleep, Rebecca sat in Nathan's hospital room alone. The machines beeped softly in the background. "I can never repay you for this," Nathan said quietly. "I don't want repayment," Rebecca replied. "I want you to take care of yourself. Not just for the next few weeks, but actually change how you're living, because Oliver needs you, and you can't take care of him if you run yourself into the ground. I know. The social worker here has been talking to me about resources, programs that might help. I'm going to apply for everything." "Good." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Nathan spoke again.